Senator Tom Cotton has a lot of faith in the military prowess of ISIS and its fighters. Unfortunately, though, he doesn't have a clue what he's talking about when he talks about ISIS's military capability and the current state of the stalemate, perhaps, between ISIS and the Iraqi forces currently trying to get them out of that country. Here, let's watch Tom Cotton speaking about this topic.
Well, the threat that the Islamic State poses to our homeland is very serious, as we saw just a few days ago in Texas. There's an investigation ongoing, but there's no doubt, if you just look on social media, that this was a Islamic State-inspired attack, regardless whether it was a Islamic State plotted or resourced or planned attack. And that's in part because the Islamic State seems to be winning right now. So they're appealing to disaffected, alienated youth all around the country who want to be with what they see as the winning horse.
Yeah, so look, he is right. According to the Twitter account of one of the shooters, he was at least inspired by ISIS. Now, bear in mind, of course, that one unarmed security guard was shot in the ankle during that attack, which means that ISIS's current ability to harm Americans it's less than a drunken frat guy rampaging through a party. I mean, obviously, it's terrible when any attack happens, but he doesn't seem all that interested in shutting down deaths from respiratory illness from carbon emissions or, you know, making cars safer, all these ways that you can make America so much safer and more secure than it currently is. Yep. But he thinks we should do anything necessary to shut down this still not even proven ability of ISIS to influence American.
Tom Cotton is a younger and dumber version of Senator John McCain.
Oh, yeah.
And the reason why I say that is because anytime there's any type of international conflict, he is right there fear-mongering and very much in favor of not only invading a country or doing airstrikes. He's in favor of troops on the ground, right, which is a disaster. So first example that I can come up with is what happened with Iran and the negotiations. He did everything he could to undermine those negotiations when he went ahead and sent a letter to officials in Iran letting them know, well, we don't care what kind of negotiation you come up with. Us Republicans in Congress are going to undermine it. And then now he's doing this, you know, with ISIS, and it's like, oh, they're an imminent threat. But are they actually an imminent threat? You're going to get to that, and you're going to prove that no, they're not.
Yeah. No, I'm so glad that you brought up that letter, because, of course, I had actually forgotten about that. The fact that this freshman senator had the gall to do that, a sort of unprecedented move to undermine the president during these international negotiations. And, of course, I believe it was actually today the Senate passed their sort of oversight bill so that when the deal does actually happen, or when it's about to happen, they will have some influence. He was, of course, the only senator who voted against it.
So Tom Cotton, I don't know if you guys know this, but Depends, the undergarment, they made him an offer to be their spokesman because he's constantly shitting his pants.
He is very scared, yes. Whether the American people know the current state in Iraq is, of course, very important, especially going into a presidential election, especially when you take into account the fact that the #1 issue on the minds of Republicans is once again national security and terrorism, replacing economic concerns, which had previously dominated for the past few years. And so they're terrified of what ISIS is doing internationally. And that could very well bleed over into independents and Democrats as well, especially as we get closer to that presidential election. And so we can't allow him to just go on cable news and say, no, we have no ability to push back ISIS. They're continuing to gain new territory. That's just factually incorrect. And so I want to give you some of the information that's come out over the past 6 months. In August, ISIS lost control of the Mosul Dam, a critical part of northern Iraq's infrastructure. In October, Iraqis pushed ISIS out of Jurf al-Sakar, a former ISIS stronghold near Baghdad. In January, Kurdish forces took Kisk, a northern town that sits on a critical ISIS supply line between its territory in Syria and Iraq, which is, of course, extremely important. And in April, Iraqi forces pushed ISIS out of Tikrit, Saddam Hussein's hometown in a major Sunni city. And so this is an analysis that comes from a couple of experts on the Iraqi military situation. They say the Islamic State has been on the defensive in Iraq for more than 8 months, and it has lost practically every battle it has fought. After peaking in August 2014, its area of control has shrunk slowly but steadily. We've shown you those maps recently. They have lost territory both in Syria and in Iraq, and the analysis goes on to show that American airstrikes have been, of course, extremely influential in ensuring that by stopping ISIS from being able to move in secret to transport troops or materiel from one place to another. And so his assertion that they both can't be beaten and that our current airstrikes are doing nothing and that we need to send in troops, both of those are factually untrue.
First of all, I always find it funny that Republicans are always scared about terrorists when they're claiming that they're the strongest when it comes to national security. they know, he knows that ISIS is not really a threat at this point. He knows that they're not winning. But by, criticizing the Obama administration, he stands to win some political favor, right?
Yeah.
So that's what it's all about. It's all about saying, look, the Obama administration, they haven't done anything. They haven't achieved anything.
Yes.
The airstrikes aren't enough. We should ramp up the airstrikes. And on top of that, we should have boots on the ground.
Yes.
That's another thing that he mentioned that is a complete and utter disaster. The last thing we want is boots on the ground in another country or several other countries as a result of a terrorist group that isn't even really gaining any traction right now.
Yeah. So they're becoming increasingly desperate. I mean, we were going to show on the show today that they're using food porn now to get new recruits by showing that they can't even feed people in their area. Only the people who actually fight for them get hummus and pita.
I know they use religion, right, to recruit people, but they're former Baathists. Right, that's why they're fighting in Iraq, because they're from Iraq and they want to take Iraq back over. They're Sunnis and they're not religious, because that's why they're against Al Qaeda. So ISIS and Al Qaeda hate each other because Al Qaeda is religious. ISIS started by former Baathists. They use religion to recruit people, but it's all about money and power. The same thing. That's why we went into Iraq, for money and power, and they want to take back over Iraq for money and power. Plus, it's where they live.
Yeah, all that's true. Now, hopefully, in the future, when he after this statement, when he's on these cable news programs, people will be there with the facts to respond when he says that the American military has not been able to do anything.